Reports are breaking that Iran is able to develop a nuclear bomb within weeks. This was first broken by ex-CIA analyst Larry Johnson, who has a source within the Pakistani government, where he was told that the Iranian president spoke to the Pakistani prime minister to tell the US, that if the US escalates, then Iran is prepared to remove the fatwa that they had, this religious ruling that said they shouldn't be developing any nuclear bombs, and will demonstrate on Iranian soil an explosion that would indicate to the world that they have a nuclear bomb, which would not be good news for, I think, the whole world, because that would lead to many other countries also having a nuclear bomb. And this is the problem with this escalation that Trump has carried out in Iran. It's doing the opposite effect of what he is claiming he's trying to do, which is to remove Iran's nuclear threat. Now, before this war, all the intelligence, US intelligence, noted that Iran is not developing a nuclear bomb. But we all know that Iran is capable of doing that. They just haven't done it. One, it's clear that they have the technical know-how. They've enriched to 60%. They can easily enrich to 90% and then above. But two, they have all the alliances that do have a nuclear bomb and have the know-how. Russia, China, Pakistan, North Korea. So it's very easy for them to develop a nuclear bomb if they wanted to. Now, how would you give them a reason for them to want to? Well, if there is a threat to their survival and they believe that the only way to fight this threat is to have a nuclear bomb, then they will go on that path. They look at, North Korea. No one's messing with North Korea because they have nuclear bombs. Then they look at Saddam Hussein in Iraq and Gaddafi in Libya, where the West convinced them to remove their, weapons, mass destruction weapons. And they did. And then they attacked them and removed them, and they died in very terrible circumstances. Let's go into the Iranian mind a bit. Now, for Iran, we're told that they are a death cult that wants destruction. However, this war showed it not to be the case, because they have the capability to close the Strait of Hormuz, as they have done now. They have the missile capability to cause destruction around the region. And they never took that action before this war. It's always, they took this action in response to what Israel and the US did. The issue that Iran had was that they didn't have deterrence. Every time they got attacked, they didn't really respond in a strong way, which made them look weak. When the US killed Qasem Soleimani, which is he was the head of the Iranian elite force, Quds force, very high IRGC person, Iran didn't really retaliate. When the US dropped the bombs from the B-2 bombers on the nuclear facilities last June, Iran didn't fully retaliate. They did a ceremonial almost attack response where they attacked the US base in Qatar, but they called the US and told them, we're going to do this attack at this time, remove your forces so there's no casualties. Trump said that himself. And every time there was an attack on Iran or on Iranian military in different places, Iran just didn't respond because they didn't want to start a war with the US. That would cause devastation across the whole region. It was very obvious. But once the US waged a full-on war with Iran under this guise that Iran is going to build a nuclear bomb and they're going to attack and cause devastation, they had to respond, especially after killing their leader. They had to create a deterrence. This whole strategy of not responding didn't really work for them. The West, unfortunately, saw that as a weakness, as they don't have that capability to respond because they would have responded. Now, think about it from the current perspective, which is Iran has responded very aggressively to the region. Any country that holds US bases was attacked. And that strategy has actually elevated Iran into a regional power because now a lot of the Gulf countries are realizing they can't rely on the US. And Iran isn't as weak as it was portrayed, that it's a house of cards and just one kind of push and everything falls apart. And now they're actually having conversations with, some of the Gulf countries are having conversations with Iran to create a non-aggression pact with them. Qatar is doing that, Saudi Arabia is doing that, Oman is already a big ally of Iran. But the problem that Iran has is that the US and Israel can easily just do some strikes on Iran. They can kill their leadership at any time. And so how do you create a deterrence for that? Because Israel has said that their work in Iran hasn't finished, that their objective is essentially the destruction of Iran. Now, they say the destruction of the Iranian government, but they don't care if that means the destruction of Iran with that, as long as the Iranian government is gone. Whether that creates a civil war where millions of people die, it doesn't matter for the Israelis. As long as Iran is reduced in terms of its power capability. Now, the tool that Iran is using right now to create a deterrence is the whole closure of the Strait of Hormuz to wage some kind of economic war on the US. But that takes a lot of time to actually be felt properly, because a reduction in the volume of oil that's passing through the Strait of Hormuz can only be really impacted once the strategic reserves of the US is depleted. This is the inventory of oil that the US holds that it can release during shock times so that it could manage the price of oil, which is what the US is doing right now. It's releasing a lot of oil from its strategic reserves. And so the impact on the oil of reaching $150, $200 isn't felt immediately until the inventories in that strategic reserve is depleted. And that will take months. It will take until July, August for that to be really, really felt. And so that tool of the Strait of Hormuz is a long-term tool that, if they open the Strait of Hormuz right now, to close it again after a year, if the US attacks Iran in a year, again, it's not going to be felt until 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later. And so they are starting to believe, the Iranians, that the only way to have proper deterrence is through a nuclear bomb. Because the US, whether Iran's building one or not, the US is always going to argue that Iran is building one. And Israel has been arguing that Iran is building one from the 1980s. Benjamin Netanyahu has been arguing that Iran is building, within a month it can build. And that's true. If Iran wants to build a nuclear bomb, they can. You can't destroy that because it's know-how. You have to kill all the scientists in Iran to be able to actually remove that capability. And even in that situation, they can still, get the know-how from their allies, so, Russia, China, North Korea, and Pakistan. And so if you're going to be attacked in any case, whether you build one or not, and the powers that are attacking you have the capability to actually cause and kill your civilization, then the US is pretty much pushing Iran in that direction of actually having a nuclear bomb, because that's the only way that the US stops attacking Iran, if Iran actually has a nuclear bomb, many of them. And that's the situation that we're in right now. This is why this is, for me, the biggest strategic foreign policy failure in my lifetime, whereby this attack on Iran is literally pushing them to be more aggressive. You're going to have to end up having or have the ability to escalate to where your enemy can escalate, which is the US and Israel can escalate towards a nuclear bomb. And the only way they're not going to escalate there is unless you have a nuclear bomb. Now, if Iran has a nuclear bomb, guess what's going to happen to Turkey, to Egypt, to Saudi Arabia? They're going to also want a nuclear bomb. And so you're going to have a proliferation of nuclear bombs across the region, because countries now realize the only countries that are not going to be attacked unless they are doing the attacking is if you have a nuclear bomb. Some people might argue that, wait, hang on, Russia has a nuclear bomb, but Ukraine's still attacking them. Well, that situation is slightly different because Russia did carry out those attacks on Ukraine, and therefore, and they're kind of having a fight around land acquisition. You can't gain land by bombing the land with nuclear bombs. That doesn't work. The idea of having that nuclear is to stop people from attacking you with nuclear. And that is a real worry for the Iranians, because they realize that Israelis have a nuclear bomb and they can easily escalate to that situation if they think that they are under threat. And that argument of, hey, we're under threat can be made at any moment, as they have been doing for such a long time. Now, whether this is true or not, we don't know. But apparently that's what the Iranians have said to the US, that essentially you're pushing us towards there and we're able to do it within weeks. And if this continues, this escalation, then we are going to go there. And in a way, you're seeing Trump have a different reaction now to Iran. Before it was complete surrender. It was, we're going to destroy your civilization. And now he is having a very different approach whereby he's saying, oh, I would like to meet, Mujtaba Khamenei, their new supreme leader. His response to Iran's attacks on Kuwait was as follows.
This latest attack on Kuwait, is the ceasefire with Iran still on?
Well, there's a reason for everything. And we hit them pretty hard the night before, and actually last night. And what it was explained to me, I said, all right, so we'll do that. But we've been hitting them pretty hard, a little bit. So there is a reason for certain things, and there's usually a reason that sometimes makes sense. But they did something, not a big deal. We got it, we nipped it in the bud very quickly, as we do. We're the greatest military in the world. But some people would say they were slightly provoked.
This latest attack on Kuwait.
He's justifying it. He's justifying the attacks on Kuwait. Why would you do that? That's a very unusual thing to do. He's saying basically that, hey, we provoked them and they reacted. And we did carry some attacks and they attacked us back. There is a different Trump right now showing up that doesn't want to escalate anymore. And it seems like that could be one of the reasons, is that he's realized now that Iran has told the Pakistani prime minister to tell the US that this is getting to a situation where we're going to build a nuclear bomb if this continues, if you escalate towards us. And this would be a huge embarrassment for Trump, because the whole point of this war, he was trying to sell it as we're trying to stop them from having a nuclear bomb. But if it results in actually them getting a nuclear bomb, that is humiliating for Trump. And so Trump is really stuck here. The issue that Trump faces in Iran is that he's never been in this situation. He's a real estate person. And yes, he understands deals, but it's a different deal when you're dealing in real estate versus geopolitics. If you don't like a deal in real estate, you just don't enter into the deal. You just get out of the deal. You don't buy that property. But over here, he can't get out of the deal. He's created a situation where Iran is more emboldened. Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz now, and it's dictating the shots. It was able to defend itself against everything that America threw at it, and it's coming out stronger than before the war. And Iran is telling him, we're not going to be able to negotiate until there's a ceasefire in Lebanon. Now, the problem is that he can't control Benjamin Netanyahu. And Israel is now occupying a big chunk of Lebanon. A ceasefire would involve basically Israel and Hezbollah to stop fighting. But they're not going to be fighting because Israel occupies a big chunk of southern Lebanon and Hezbollah is fighting them in that area. And so Israel would have to leave Lebanon for there to be a full ceasefire. And that's not going to happen. The only way that's going to happen is if Israel faces extreme heavy losses or Trump actually manages to put pressure on Israel to move back to Israel. And I don't see that happening. Iran holds so much cards right now that they're saying we're not even going to negotiate on the nuclear point until you stop the blockade, you unfreeze our assets, and there is a ceasefire across the region, which includes Lebanon and Israel. Now, Lebanon and Israel actually entered into a ceasefire where they said that the Lebanese government and the Israeli government entered into a ceasefire where they said that, as long as Hezbollah doesn't attack, then we're going to have this ceasefire. But as part of that, Hezbollah needs to move out of southern Lebanon, which is where those people are from. And until that's done, then Israel will think about going back to Israel. But that's never going to happen. Hezbollah isn't going to just concede and surrender to Israel, which is occupying 20% of Lebanon. And so the only way forward is if Trump actually pushes pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to move out, which I don't see happening. But at the same time, the longer this takes, the economic situation will get worse and worse as the strategic reserve of the U.S., where the U.S. holds the oil inventory, gets depleted. That's why oil prices are not $150. It's mainly because the U.S. is releasing a lot of oil from their strategic reserve, which is temporary. It's limited. Come July, August, there's going to be shortages of oil if this continues. And so Trump has to make concessions. But how is he able to concede by giving Iran their unfrozen assets of $20 billion when he's made fun of Obama for doing that as part of the JCPOA? And Obama only did $2 billion. Iran's asking him to do now $24 billion. How's he going to sell that when he's labeled the Obama deal as the worst deal ever? That's the predicament that Trump is in. But in Trump's world, in Trump's experience, he can just get out of a deal. Right now, he can't get out of a deal. He has to get into a deal, and he has to make those concessions. The other option is to escalate. But escalation would lead to Iran building a nuclear bomb, because then they would see, from an Iranian perspective, that that's the only way to create real deterrence from attacks by US and Israel, where they can escalate to using their nuclear bombs. And it seems like Russia and China are fully supporting Iran. Lots of reports are coming out that Chinese and Russian equipment are in Iranian hands. And that's why Trump is very hesitant about starting this war now, because it seems Iran has better capability than before the war. And at the same time, the US has depleted a lot of their ammunition. This must be one of the most not thought through processes of waging a war we have ever seen. Clearly, the US, Trump thought this is going to be a weekend excursion of just killing the leadership in Iran, and Iran's going to fall apart, and it's going to take a couple of days, maximum 2 weeks, and that's it. And that's not the case. We'd love to know your thoughts about this new news about Iran able to go to create a nuclear bomb if pushed within weeks, if Trump's going to escalate, or actually going to make those concessions. If you did like this video, do hit the like and subscribe, and we'll see you very soon.